The oceans are a territory of secrets. Only a small part of it has been studied by man, and then there are only questions that have yet to be answered. What unknown creatures live in its depths? Where do the ships or their crews disappear to? Why does the ocean sometimes return a ship to us as a silent memorial to disappeared sailors? Such ships are called ghost ships. They have been known since ancient times. They appear now and will certainly appear in the future. Today, Top F will tell you 5 cases of the ghost ships, stories, and meetings with which inspire fear. Climb aboard, we're starting. Palatine. The legend of a burning ghost ship that appears near the American Block Island is based on a real shipwreck. In August 1738, the British cargo ship Princess Augustine left Rotterdam. He was on his way to the West Indies, and along the way he picked up more than 200 migrants from Germany who wanted to go to America. Such transportations brought a good additional income. But the journey went wrong. The water on the ship turned out to be undrinkable, some passengers caught a fever and died, and the ship itself lost its way due to constant storms. Princess Augustine was swept north, and the survivors had to contend not only with dwindling food supplies, but also with constant cold. After the captain's death, First Officer Andrew Brooke took command and decided to sell the remaining supplies to barely living passengers. On December 27, 1738, the ship crashed near Block Island. Brooke tried various routes to reach his destination in Philadelphia, but because of the storm and snowfall, he could not cope with the task. According to the memories of the survivors, Brooke was primarily worried about his own life, so he left Augustine first, along with the rest of his team. Passengers had to evaluate themselves. Local residents sheltered the victims, helped them out, helped to get personal belongings from the ship, and buried the dead, about 20 people. The reception was so warm that several migrants decided to stay on the island. The ship itself was set on fire by people and sunk into the sea. It is believed that a certain Mary Vanderlyn remained on board, and the journey drove her crazy. The woman allegedly burned down along with the ship, as she was not noticed during the evacuation. It is also possible that she refused to leave Augustine. However, no one managed to find the remains of the ship. Because of this, rumors arose that the ship was repaired and sent to Philadelphia. However, there is another version of events. It was popularized by the American poet John Whittier. From a Rhode Islander, he heard a darker story based on the notoriety of Block Island. The sailors did not like to sail past him because the locals constantly lured ships ashore and took all the cargo for themselves, killing the unfortunate sailors. In Whittier's 1867 poem The Palatine, the locals started the ship in shallow water with beacons, finished off the hungry and frozen passengers, set fire to the ship, and lowered it into the sea to hide the traces of the crime. A year later, a burning ghost ship appeared off the coast of the island, which has been haunting residents ever since. The author named the ship Palatine because, like the Augustina, it transported residents from the German region of the Palatinate, who were called Palatines. It was this name that later turned out to be on everyone's lips. Interestingly, from the beginning of the 19th century, and even earlier, the inhabitants of the island began to talk about mysterious fires resembling a burning ship that appeared between Christmas and New Year. They claim that an eyewitness can even hear the screams of the same woman who burned down with the ship. Probably, John Whittier communicated with one of those who believed in the appearance of a ghost ship and has built the plot of the poem on this. On the territory of New England, located near Block Island, they believe that the Palatine appears to punish the inhabitants of the island, who plundered the ship a long time ago, killing its passengers. The local population, in turn, considers the appearance of fire on the horizon simply as a bad sign that predicts bad weather. In 1947, at the crash site of Princess Augustine, the historical community of Block Island erected a monument in honor of the victims of the disaster, Palatine Graves, 1738. This is the only proof of the veracity of at least part of the legend. But, as in many other cases, it is no longer possible to accurately confirm or refute the story. Mary Celeste. The history of Mary Celeste has become the most mystical and mysterious in the history of navigation. We may never be able to unravel this mystery. Many writers have offered their own solutions. This fate did not bypass the famous Arthur Conan Doyle, but the truth was not revealed to anyone. On November 10, 1872, the brigantine Mary Celeste left New York with a cargo of rectified alcohol and barrels and headed for Genoa. The crew of the ship consisted of 8 people, headed by Captain Benjamin Briggs, who had 20 years of sailing experience. On that fateful voyage, Briggs took his wife and daughter on board. After leaving the port, the sailboat disappeared, as if it immediately went underwater. Mary Celeste was discovered on December 4, 1872, 400 miles from the Strait of Gibraltar. The last entry in the brigantine's logbook was dated November 24th, but it did not shed any light on what had happened. That day, the captain simply wrote down the position and course of the ship. The ship was abandoned, but was in almost perfect order. On the deck, the bow hold hatch was open. There was about a meter of water in it. The only boat was missing. On the starboard railing, deep notches were made with an axe. All windows of the aft superstructure were covered with tarpaulin and boarded up with boards. Along the sides of the brigantine, there were cuts an inch wide, 2 meters long each. The detectives established that they were made with some kind of carpentry tool around the end of November, just at the time when the last entry was made in the ship's log. The furniture in the cabins was in place, the bunks were neatly tucked in, and clothes hung on hangers. In the wardroom, everything looked as if people had just left. The dining table was littered with plates, cups, knives, and forks. By the porthole was a sewing machine with unfinished work, a child's shirt. Toys were scattered on the floor. In the drawer of the table lay a wooden box inlaid with mother-of-pearl, in which, in addition to jewelry, a thick bundle of banknotes was found, which completely rejected the option of a pirate attack. It is also striking that the sailors did not take with them smoking pipes, which they never parted with. Only the cargo manifests, the sextant and the chronometer were missing. The ship's compass was broken. The brigantine was towed to Gibraltar, where the Admiralty authorities immediately launched a thorough investigation. It lasted 11 years, but never delivered a definite verdict. Here is the Commission's closing statement. In the complete absence of any data that can shed light on this matter, it is to be feared that the fate of the Mary Celeste crew will increase the secrets of the ocean, which will open only on that great day when the sea will abandon its dead men. If a crime has been committed, which makes a lot of things suspect, then there is little hope that the criminals will fall into the hands of justice. The discovery of the ship gave rise to a lot of speculation and rumors. The possibility of a mutiny, a pirate attack, the impact of the Bermuda Triangle, or infrasound was discussed. Some recalled semi-fantastic stories of alleged attacks on ships by giant squids, octopuses, and sea serpents. However, even such exotic versions could not bring together all the facts. For example, the version of the seizure by pirates does not explain why a very attractive cargo of alcohol remained untouched, for them more precisely, rectified cognac, which could not only be drunk, but also sold at a profit. The version of attack or mutiny does not explain the absence of signs of a struggle or records of victims. Versions associated with unexplained phenomena contain a large number of unverifiable assumptions. Plausible explanations boiled down to the fact that the crew and passengers left the ship of their own free will, and differ only in the interpretation of the reasons that prompted them to such strange behavior in a relatively calm, according to other ships in the area and at that time, but a cold ocean, with a more than acceptable condition of the ship. At the same time, it is difficult to explain the everywhere open skylights and cargo hatches, abandoned valuables and the ship's log, order in the captain's cabin and cockpit, superstructures boarded up with tarpaulin, abandoned sailor pipes, etc. Perhaps the Mary Celeste crew, after all, left the ship in a hurry due to the captain's erroneous decisions. But if there is no mysticism here, then why did the ship's journal of the sailboat disappear from the office of the Gibraltar court? Octavius. Another supposedly fictional story is about the ship Octavius. In 1761, the ship set off on the London-China route. There was a crew of 28 on board, including the captain, his wife, and son. The journey went without problems. The cargo was delivered intact. However, on the way back, the captain decided to pave the way through the Northwest Passage of the Arctic Ocean. The idea was unsafe. This route was completely passed only at the beginning of the 20th century. Before that, more than one research expedition had died in those waters. It was in this area that Octavius went missing. On October 11, 1775, the whaling ship Herald, commanded by a captain named Warren, stumbled upon a ship that was in poor condition near Greenland. The captain of the Herald ordered to inspect the find. It was the Octavius. At first glance, it seemed that there was no one on the ship. Not finding anything on the deck, the sailors went down into the hold. It was there that they found the crew. All 28 people froze to death. The captain of the ghost ship was in his quarters, having died from icing while filling out the logbook, and all his personal belongings were neatly laid out on the table. Not far from the captain lay his wife, wrapped in a blanket, as well as a child. The sailors were horrified by such a find and quickly left the ship. They tried to take the ship's log with them, but most of the pages were lost during the escape. The sailors could only get acquainted with the beginning and end of the report. It turned out that Octavius got stuck in the ice of the Arctic during the trip. The last coordinates recorded in the log indicated that the ship was 250 miles from Alaska. Nevertheless, the ship still got out of the ice captivity. The Herald team, seriously frightened by the find, did not touch the ship, and it continued its voyage. Nobody saw him again. Apparently, the old legend about Octavius became the basis for many other similar stories. Mentions of such plots have been found since the 19th century. In late 1828, the American newspaper The Ariel, a literary and critical gazette, published a story entitled The Danger of Navigation in High Latitudes. It told that an unnamed ship was stuck in the ice on November 11, 1762. 13 years later, it was discovered by the captain of a Greenland whaling ship named Warren's. Further, the plot develops similarly. The sailors see the corpses of a frozen crew, a captain, a woman, and a child who tried to make a fire before his death. There was even a dog on the ship. It turned out that the crew of the ship lived in the ice for 70 days until the last sailor died. Warren's allegedly took the ship's log and subsequently conducted his investigation. At the end of the story, it is said that he was able to find out the name of the ship, but this information is not revealed to the reader. The story appears to have been reprinted almost identically in other 19th century literary journals, such as the Republican Advocate and the South Australian Register. Another version of the story is presented in the Blue Adventure book, a collection of stirring scenes and moving accidents from the world of adventure. Its main character is also Captain John Warren's. The name of his ship is also given. It named Try Again. Sailor discovers a ghost ship in the same 1775. But there are also a few differences from previous versions. First, the name of the missing ship is the Gloriana. Secondly, the ship's crew spent not 70 days in the ice, but 17. In addition, in this version of the story, as in the previous one, there is no mention of the northwestern route. The name of the ship Octavius appeared already in the middle of the 20th century in new versions of the legend. The American writer Vincent Gaddis played a significant role in popularizing this name. He also introduced the name Bermuda Triangle. In the 1965 book Invisible Horizons, True Mysteries of the Sea, it is Gaddis who narrates, referring to articles from Fate magazine, a modern version of the legend that features the Octavius, the Northwest Passage, the Herald, Captain Warren, and the lost pages of the ship's log during the escape from the ghost ship. However, it is still impossible to say exactly where the legend of Octavius came from and whether there is any truth in it. It is possible that this story was nevertheless invented by the authors of short stories for literary newspapers to entertain the public, showing an interest in expeditions to the Arctic, which were often carried out in the 20s of the 19th century. Or maybe the story is true and somewhere there really was a ship that suffered such a fate. Case 2. This story happened already in this century. It is well researched and documented. There are answers to many questions except one: where is the team? Fishing catamaran Case 2 belonged to Derek Batten, who went fishing off the coast of Australia with two of his friends, brothers James and Peter Tunstead. The route lay from the small Australian town of Airlie Beach to Townsville past the Great Barrier Reef. These three brave men, the youngest of whom, Batten, was 56 years old, like the heroes of the famous classic Three in a Boat, not counting the dogs, decided to take a break from routine family life and get a dose of adrenaline from fishing and an exciting sea voyage.
On April 15, 2007, swimming began.
Further, on April 18th, Case 2 was seen from a helicopter in free swimming with no signs of a crew on board. On the 20th, a maritime patrol boarding the yacht recorded the disappearance of the crew. Then there was an investigation that could not shed light on the mystery of the disappearance of the yacht's crew. The property of the catamaran, as well as the things of the team, were in place. The only damage on the ship was a torn sail. Otherwise, everything looked as if people simply disappeared from the yacht in an instant. The ship had on board modern navigational instruments, life jackets, and a small boat. All this remained untouched. Moreover, there were dishes and unfinished coffee on the table. The yacht's engine was running and even the laptop remained on. The members of the crew of the ill-fated yacht were not found as a result of the search. Nobody else saw them. The yacht was immediately dubbed a ghost ship. Versions of the disappearance of men were put forward very differently. And indeed, this is another of the mysteries that occurred in the ocean. It was officially announced that all three drowned, but there is no evidence of this version. Most likely the answer to the question, where did the Case 2 team go, we will never know. Tricolor. John Robinson, who held a high position in NATO in the 1950s, shared this story from his life. During his long and distinguished service in the Army and Navy, Robinson changed many positions, steadily rising the ranks. Then back in 1936, a young officer Robinson began his service on the British merchant ship Khosrow. The first 9 months flew by. From the endless series of monotonous days filled with the routine work of the skipper, John could single out several non-standard situations that he could not explain logically. One day the steamer landed on a sandbank in the middle of the ocean, which was not marked on the maps. On another occasion, they searched all night for ships sending SOS signals and found nothing. Later, information about ships in distress in that area was also not confirmed. However, what happened while sailing in the Bay of Bengal, John could not forget until the end of his life. The ship Khosrow with cargo left Calcutta on a course to Bombay. The weather was terrible. A continuous veil of clouds covered the sky completely, which did not contribute to easy navigation. It rained at times. Twilight and poor visibility forced us to be constantly on alert. The only companion in this gloomy void was the steamer Mamio, which accompanied the Khosrow for several days and then disappeared. John took over the watch and let the skipper rest. A few hours later, a frightened skipper ran into the cabin and demanded to measure the depth. Timely action saved the ship from running aground. After the ship changed course and went into deep water, the skipper said that he had a dream about a ship that had run aground. Upon arrival at the port, it became known about the death of the steamer Mamio. It happened a mile from where John's ship nearly ran aground. As it turns out that the skipper saw a prophetic dream? On the way back from Bombay to Calcutta, John encountered a ghost ship. the weather has completely deteriorated. There was a tropical downpour and visibility deteriorated greatly. In such cases, the maritime regulations prescribe slowing down and giving siren signals at intervals of several minutes. Through a continuous veil of rain ahead, the sounds of a siren from a ship going on a collision course were heard. The steamer coast route with stopped engines was waiting for the approach of an unknown ship coming towards them. Through the wall of rain, at a distance of no more than 1 cable to the port, a ship proceeded along the side, on board which the name Tricolor was read. There were no sailors on deck, even the wheelhouse was empty. At that moment, when the oncoming ship disappeared from view, the tropical downpour, as it happens, suddenly ended. John proceeded to the pilot house and oriented himself on the map. He broke out in a cold sweat. On the map, their location was marked as the place of the death of the ship Tricolor. This ship sank here after an explosion on January 5th, 1931. The date on the calendar was January 5th, 1937. That is, exactly 6 years ago, the ship Tricolor sank at this place. It turns out that John Robinson, the skipper, the first mate, and several other sailors who were on duty that day met the ghost of the lost ship. Fortunately, this meeting ended happily and John Robinson was able to talk about it. But for sure there were cases of meetings with ghost ships about which there was no one to tell. After all, such meetings do not bode well. That's all for today. Mr. Top F was with you. Thanks for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and like this video if you haven't done it yet. Also, turn on notifications on our channel to catch all new videos. Bye.